Welcome to the Rulebook. I'm your host, Alex Palmer, and I'm the queen of learning things the hard way so you don't have to. On this podcast, we're going to be talking about the mistakes I made and the lessons I learned along the way to create the rules I now live by. On each episode, we're going to be discussing a new rule, how it came about, why I created it, and how you can apply it in your own life. So let's get into it. Welcome to episode number 4, Dating Rules. I asked you what you wanted me to do a podcast on, and you guys unanimously voted for dating. I've said this once and I'll say it again. This is not a dating podcast, but nothing is off limits here. So let's get into it. I rapid fired some dating rules on my Instagram earlier this week, and I figured that I would go through them once again here. Rule number 1, don't date someone outside your borough. Long distance relationships never work. Duh. Number 2, if a guy says that you're the only funny girl he's ever met, 1, he's lying, and 2, he's missing out because there's a lot of funny women in this world, and that's a big ass red flag if you can't see that. Rule number 3, if a guy doesn't pick you up for your date, wear your sneakers because he's just a friend. And rule number 4, if a guy says he's picky, he's probably emotionally unavailable, which means he's going to find something wrong with you faster than a food inspector at a dirty restaurant. Okay, now a lot of those are jokes and they made it to TikTok and some of them were even controversial. So I was trying to decide which rule I would use for this podcast. And I came to this conclusion. Rule number 4, the first date will tell you everything you need to know. And trusting your own instincts is the only dating rule you really need. I chose this rule because I think most people don't trust their own instincts enough and they approach dating with rose-colored glasses, which turns all the red flags pink. Conveniently. I went on tons of first dates that probably should have been last dates. And I didn't really want to do a dating podcast episode because, to be totally honest, my dating history makes me cringe. Because when I was in my 20s, I would put up with a whole bunch of shit that I probably could have easily avoided had I just trusted my own instincts about people. When someone shows you who they are the first time, you should believe them. And that definitely applies in dating. I mean, especially applies in dating. First dates especially can be challenging because most of us want to put our best foot forward and make a good impression. 1, because I think we all just naturally want people to like us. And 2, because you do want the first date to go well. If it doesn't, it's a waste of time, right? But I do think some of us don't show up with our best feet forward. Especially in my case, when I went out with men who would show up and they were unable to move a conversation forward because they weren't listening or they just weren't engaging with me or they were overly flirty. So they were making me uncomfortable. And those are all really huge red flags because if a guy was actually putting in energy and effort to truly get to know you on this date, he wouldn't risk you losing interest with that behavior, aka being overly flirty or not engaging with you enough. When I would have dates like these, unfortunately, the people pleaser in me would go into complete fucking overdrive. Because I was like, I can save this sinking ship. I'll just be charming as fuck. And I was. Because when I was younger, I was totally obsessed with validation. It didn't matter who or where I got it from, just as long as I got it, you know? And I'd honestly go on dates and charm myself because I'd be funny and be engaging. I'd be happy. And I would leave thinking, I know I had a great time with that person. Really, that person was just kind of sitting there. And I'm not saying, I was just talking about myself. I mean, I was asking them questions and getting to know them and making them feel super comfortable. When they were not doing the same for me. But I was so overly concerned with my dates liking me that I would never stop and think, wait, do I like him? That's how disconnected I was from my own instincts and from my own, literally my gut. And I think I definitely could have saved myself from tons of heartache had I not approached dating like that. I went out with tons of people who didn't deserve second dates, and I gave them second dates. Because I didn't trust myself. I couldn't trust my instincts. Hence a series of unfortunate events/relationships. But whatever. A first date example that's really standing out to me here when I talk about this is I went out with a guy a few years ago. And on our date, he showed up and he told me he was feeling really low energy. I think I asked because he was barely speaking to me. He was, I don't know, he just seemed to be in a bad mood. And I said, hey, is everything okay? Because that's not initially the vibe that I had caught from him originally when he asked me out. And I said, okay. And he was like, I'm just feeling really low energy today. So I'm sorry if I'm not talking. That was it. I was like, okay. So this is old Alex we're talking about. And of course, I decided to turn it up, you know? I was like, I'm going to save this guy. I'm going to save this night. And I worked so fucking hard to change that guy's mood. I worked so hard to change that guy's mood. And of course, I think I did. I was successful. And guess what? I went on to date him for 8 months. What the fuck? And now that I sit here and I process that relationship, and it wasn't, you know, the worst relationship. And I did go on to have 8 months of decent conversations with this person. But ultimately, him letting me know he was unable to pull it together for the date was foreshadowing the fact that he was unable to pull it together for the whole relationship, ultimately, because it didn't last. And I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty, but who he was that night was pretty much who he was throughout the relationship. And looking back, I think it's really funny that he figured he could show up as not his best self, and me as a woman, I'd be okay with that. Because you see, the audacity to think that you can get away with bare minimum on a first date. It speaks volumes. It really does. It just shows that, one, you're either overestimating yourself, or two, you're underestimating the person across from you. And three, if you allow yourself to show up into situations like that, I don't even care if it's dating. It could be anything. You want to show up to an interview, whatever the case may be. You're not prepared. And if that's the type of person you are, you got to do some more soul searching and figure out how the fuck you can fix that, because that is not cute and it's not okay. But I think people, they do this all the time. If you don't want to be there, don't go. Ultimately, if there's a reason you're feeling low energy, there's a reason you don't feel excited that night or whatever, cancel. It's okay. The other person will understand, and maybe you'll actually have done them a favor and yourself a favor in the long run. I went on another first date with a guy from a dating app that's standing out right now. And it's because he suggested we go on a dog walk. I have 2 dogs. I went on a dog walk with him, and I was like, okay, this is whatever. Like, it's no skin off my, what's the expression? No skin off my teeth? No skin off my back? I don't know. Whatever it is. But I was like, okay, this is low risk. But you know what they say, when it's low risk, it's low reward. So we went on this dog walk, and immediately when I saw him standing there, I was like, okay, this is just going to be a first date only. There will be no other dates. And we walked for 20 minutes. We were not vibing at all. And I think ultimately I never even needed to go on that date, because the fact is, him suggesting a little dog walk as a date, one, that's really not a date. And two, why did I accept such a lowball offer? Clearly, it shows that both of us were unavailable in some capacity, because look at the level of effort we were both willing to invest. It shows that neither of us really wanted to be there. I mean, I had to walk my dog, so there's that. But technically that date did not need to happen. And actually it did make me go on to delete the dating app that I was on. So maybe it did need to happen for me, because it was a really good little catalyst. But dating is hard. Putting yourself out there is really, really fucking hard, because you have to be vulnerable with people. And I think the best way to protect yourself truly is to raise your standards. And you can do that simply by trusting your own instincts. Because I think a lot of us will be like, oh yeah, I'm going to raise my standards, but not really knowing what that means. Like, we know what it means, but objectively, but subjectively for us, we don't exactly know what that looks like. But I think the best way to know what that looks like for you is to trust your own instincts. So I don't care if a guy ugh, this is disgusting. Maybe a guy picks his nose at the dinner table. Maybe that's your instinct being like, no, not husband material, not boyfriend material. Or maybe for someone else, that shit doesn't bother them. I don't know. This is a poor example, okay? But I'm just saying that raising your standards can look like whatever that looks like for you. It's totally acceptable. Because I think if you are putting in all this effort, making your best impressions, showing up as your best self, the first sign of an ick, you got to exit stage left, okay? Because you can't waste your time. You can't waste your energy on people who give you the ick. Life is too short to spend it with the wrong people. Trust me. Trust me. So you guys, go date, match energies, don't ignore red flags, and watch how much easier it becomes. And trust your goddamn gut. I don't care if your friend doesn't agree with you. What do you want? Like in the Notebook, what do you want? That. Keep that energy. And who knows? Maybe you'll actually find someone that you like. It is possible. So thank you guys so much for listening to episode 4 of the Rulebook. I'm Alex Palmer. I hope that you will come back. Subscribe to this podcast if you haven't already. Like, comment, share it with a friend, tell a friend to tell a friend, and follow me on all social medias at Serious Actress. Bye, guys.